The discharged soldiers. The dense, fog-choked jungle of the northern border harbored many secrets. Built during a forgotten war, Outpost 404 was a decaying concrete bunker surrounded by rusted barbed wire. 3 young conscripts, Private Eris, Private Dome, and Private King, had just been deployed here for a mandatory 1-week transition shift before their final discharge. On their very first afternoon, while exploring the damp, rotting supply warehouse, Eris stumbled upon a rusted metal lockbox. Inside was not ammunition, but a blood-stained, handwritten military logbook. On the first page, a warning was scrawled in frantic handwriting.
To whoever is stationed at Outpost 404, the border is not what you are protecting. You are protecting yourselves from what lies beyond. If you wish to receive your discharge papers alive, you must obey these 14 rules. The 14 rules of Outpost 404.
Rule 1. The evening roll call must always be conducted at exactly 1800 o'clock. Even if there are only 3 of you, always count to 4. Do not look at the 4th person. Just acknowledge him and dismiss. Rule 2. At night, the watchtower searchlight must remain active. If the light suddenly sweeps across the jungle and reveals a group of soldiers in outdated 1970s uniforms marching toward the fence, turn off the searchlight immediately. They only move when they are seen. Rule 3. The bunker door has 3 deadbolts. If you hear a scratching sound resembling a dog trying to get in, ignore it. But if the scratching turns into a rhythmic, polite 3-knock sequence, you must shout, "The shift is over, comrade!" in a firm voice. Rule 4. There is a wooden crate in the kitchen labeled Emergency Rations, Batch B. Do not open it. If you hear wet, chewing noises coming from inside the crate, pour salt over the lid until the noise stops. Rule 5. The radio will occasionally crackle to life with static. If a voice asks for your coordinates, give them the wrong ones. If you give them the correct coordinates, an artillery strike of phantom shells will rain down on the bunker. Rule 6. Never look directly into the ventilation shafts between midnight and 03. If you feel cold water dripping from the vent onto your face, it is not water. It is saliva. Wipe it off silently and change your position. Rule 7. Should you need to forage or hunt outside during the day, never go alone, and never carry more than 3 bullets in your magazine. The forest feeds on greed. Carrying too much ammo makes you the prey. Rule 8. When hunting, if you shoot a rabbit or a deer and find that it has human-like teeth, bury the carcass immediately. Do not bring it back, and do not eat it. Rule 9. The bunker's water tank on the roof is sealed. If the tap water in the kitchen suddenly runs thick and rusty brown with a copper smell, do not drink it. Boil the remaining canned broth instead. Rule 10. If you see one of your comrades standing in a dark corner facing the wall, whispering to himself. Do not call his name. Walk up behind him and gently place a military cap on his head to snap him out of the trance. Rule 11. During heavy rain, a faceless woman in a drenched rain poncho might stand outside the window. Do not wipe the fog off the glass to see her better. If the glass fogs up completely, she cannot see you either. Rule 12. Every night at 3:33, the grandfather clock in the mess hall, which has no batteries, will tick
once. When it does, everyone must hold hands in a circle. If someone's hand feels ice cold, do not let go, no matter how hard they squeeze. Rule 13. If you find a black mold growing in the shape of a human silhouette on the barracks wall, burn it with a lighter immediately. If the silhouette grows a face, it is too late. Rule 14. On your 8th day, the relief truck will arrive at 0800. If it arrives even a minute earlier, do not board it. The real truck will blow its horn 3 times.
Eris, trembling, brought the logbook to the mess hall and showed it to his friends. Dome, a pragmatic and quiet soldier, frowned, immediately analyzing their food situation. We only have enough dry rations for 3 days, Dome muttered. If we want to survive a week, we have to ration carefully and eventually hunt. Kang, however, burst into a loud, mocking laugh. Are you guys idiots? Kang sneered, tossing his cigarette onto the concrete floor. This is just a classic hazing ritual left by the previous squad to scare the rookies. Ghosts, rules. Watch this. Kang grabbed his rifle, pointed it toward the dark jungle outside, and yelled, "Hey, if there are any ghouls out there, come get me. I'll blast your brains out." Eris and Dome tried to pull him back, but Kang just laughed, completely dismissing their fears. It was a fatal mistake. The 7-day log of survival. Day 1, the Defiance. Active rules: Rule 1, Rule 10, Rule 4. At 1800, they reluctantly conducted the roll call. Rule 1. Eris counted. 1, 2, 3. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the room, and a raspy, disembodied voice echoed. 4. Kang scoffed, but Dome quickly yelled, "Dismissed!" preventing anyone from looking around. Later that night, the kitchen echoed with a sickening, a wet, chewing sound coming from the forbidden Batch B crate. Rule 4. Infuriated and hungry, Kang refused to use the salt. "It's probably just rats," he snapped. He kicked the crate hard. The chewing stopped instantly, replaced by a low, vibrating growl that vibrated through the floorboards. Day 2, the first hunt and broken glass. Active rules: Rule 7, Rule 8, Rule 11. With their rations running low, Dome calculated that they needed fresh meat to stretch their supplies. Eris and Kang went out to hunt. Rule 7. Deep in the woods, Kang shot a strange, pale rabbit. When Eris inspected it, he gasped. The rabbit had a full set of perfectly white, flat, human molars. Rule 8. "Bury it, Kang. It's Rule 8, Eris panicked. But Kang refused. "Meat is meat. You guys are paranoid."
he secretly hid the carcass in his pack. That night, a torrential downpour hit. A figure in a drenched poncho appeared outside the window. Rule 11. Kang, annoyed by the fogged-up glass, wiped it clean to peer outside. The faceless woman slammed her head against the glass, cracking it. Kang screamed and fell backward as the faceless entity stared into his soul through the fracture. Day 3. The Price of Greed. Active rules: Rule 4, Rule 10, Rule 6. The rot set in quickly. Kang, who had secretly cooked and eaten a portion of the human-toothed rabbit, began acting strangely. By midnight, Dome found Kang standing in the corner of the barracks, staring blankly at the wall, whispering incoherent military jargon. Rule 10. Remembering the rule, Dome quickly grabbed a spare army cap and placed it on Kang's head. Kang collapsed, gasping for air, his eyes bloodshot. Meanwhile, Eris lay on his cot when cold water dripped onto his cheek. He went to wipe it, but it was thick, sticky, and smelled of rot. He looked up slightly. Long, pale fingers were poking out of the dark ventilation shaft. Remembering the rule, he silently wiped his face, rolled off the bed, and slept on the floor. The kitchen crate began shaking violently. This time, Dome did not hesitate. He dumped an entire container of salt over the lid. A muffled shriek echoed from inside. And then, silence. Day 4. The Phantom Army. Active rules: Rule 2, Rule 13, Rule 9. Water ran black and smelling of old blood from the taps. Rule 9. Dome strictly forbade drinking it, forcing them to boil their remaining canned mushroom broth to stay hydrated. While checking the perimeter, Aris noticed a dark, human-shaped mold growing on the wall near Kang's bunk. Rule 13. Before Aris could grab his lighter, Kang, delirious from the cursed meat he had consumed, blocked him. "Leave it! It speaks to me!" Kang muttered. Suddenly, the watchtower searchlight swept across the perimeter and illuminated a platoon of soldiers in 1970s fatigues marching toward the fence. Rule 2. Their eyes were hollow sockets. Dome screamed at Kang, who was operating the light, to shut it off. Kang, completely paralyzed by fear, couldn't move. Dome rushed up the ladder and cut the power just as the dead soldiers reached the barbed wire. When the light died, the sounds of marching vanished. Day 5. The toll is taken. Active rules: Rule 3, Rule 13, Rule 12. The black mold on the wall had now grown a terrifyingly realistic screaming face. Rule 13. At 03:33, the grandfather clock ticked. Rule 12. Eris, Dome, and Kang held hands in a tight circle. Kang's hand felt like a block of ice, squeezing Eris's hand so hard the bones popped. Eris screamed in pain, but held on. Suddenly, a loud, polite knock, knock, knock sounded at the steel bunker door. Rule 3. Kang, driven mad by the whispering mold and the icy chill in his veins, broke the circle. "I'll let them in! I'll end this!" he screamed, rushing toward the door. "Kang, no!" Dome yelled. But it was too late. Kang threw open the deadbolts. The door swung open to reveal a pitch-black void.
Pale, skeletal hands reached from the darkness, wrapping around Kang's neck and dragging him screaming into the abyss. Dome managed to slam the door shut and slide the deadbolts back in place, shouting, "The shift is over, comrade!" Kang's screams outside abruptly ceased. Day 6. The Phantom Shelling. Active rules: Rule 5, Rule 9, Rule 10. Only Eris and Dome remained. They were starving, dehydrated, and exhausted. The radio crackled to life. Rule 5. A distorted voice rasped. Outpost 404, we have detected enemy movement. Give us your coordinates for fire support. Dome, delirious from lack of sleep, almost read the actual coordinates of the bunker from the wall map. Eris grabbed his arm just in time. "No, Dome, remember the rule. Give them the wrong ones." Dome shook his head, cleared his throat, and read a coordinate set 5 kilometers to the south. 10 minutes later, the distant thundering booms of phantom artillery shook the earth, far away from their position. Day 7. The Final Siege. Active rules: Rule 1, Rule 3, Rule 12. It was the final night. The entities of the forest knew their prey was about to escape. At 18 p.m. roll call, Rule 1. Aris counted. 1, 2. 2 distinct, terrifying voices responded in unison. 3, 4. Aris and Domi stood perfectly still, eyes glued to the floor, refusing to look up at the 2 shadows stretching across the wall. At 3:33 a.m., Rule 12, they held hands. The temperature in the room dropped below freezing. Simultaneously, the scratching at the door turned into a furious, rhythmic knocking. Rule 3. Both of them screamed together at the top of their... "The shift is over, comrade. The shift is over." The bunker walls shook as if under siege. Evil laughter echoed through the ventilation shafts, but they held hands, crying and praying, refusing to let go until the first light of dawn broke through the cracked window. Day 8. The Discharge. At exactly 0750, the sound of a heavy engine idling echoed outside. Through the cracked window, Eris saw a green military transport truck. "We made it!" Dome gasped, running toward the door. "Wait!" Eris grabbed Dome's shoulder, pointing at his watch. "It's 0750. Rule 14. The truck is 10 minutes early." They watched in horror as the truck outside sat silently. No horn blew. Suddenly, the driver's side door of the truck opened, and Kang, his body twisted, skin pale, and eyes entirely black, stepped out, smiling a wide, unnatural grin. He gestured for them to come out. Dome fell to his knees, shivering. They waited. At exactly 8:08, a loud, sharp truck horn blew 3 times from the opposite side of the road. Another green truck rolled up, its headlights cutting through the fog. The fake truck and the monstrous apparition of Kang dissolved into black mist as the real rescue team arrived. Eris and Dome ran out of the bunker, boarding the real truck without looking back. As the vehicle drove away, Eris looked out the back flap. There, standing at the edge of the dark jungle, were 3 figures in outdated uniforms, and a 4th one wearing Kang's military cap, silently watching them leave. Day 8, 8:05. The False Salvation. Active rules: Rule 14, Rule 5, Rule 1. The real rescue truck had arrived, blowing its horn 3 times at exactly 8:00, Rule 14. Eris and Dome scrambled out of the concrete bunker, their hearts pounding with tears of relief. They climbed onto the back of the green military transport. The engine roared, and the truck began to move away from Outpost 404, speeding through the foggy, winding mountain road. For the first 30 minutes, they felt safe. But Dome, ever the analyst, noticed something wrong. He looked at his military wristwatch. The hands were spinning backward. "Aris, look outside," Dome whispered, his face turning pale. Aris peered through the back flap of the truck. The scenery wasn't changing. The same jagged rocks, the same distorted pine trees, and the same rusted barbed wire fence of Outpost 404 kept looping over and over again. Suddenly, the truck slammed its brakes. The canvas flap at the front opened, and the driver turned around. It was the sergeant who was supposed to rescue them, but his face was frozen in a hideous, unblinking grin. "Roll call, boys," the sergeant rasped, his voice echoing with the screams of 1,000 dead souls. 1, 2. From the empty seats next to Aris and Dome, 2 invisible forces pressed down, and the raspy voices of Kang and the faceless woman answered. 3, 4. Before they could scream, the truck vanished into black mist, dropping Eris and Dome heavily onto the wet mud. They were right back where they started, in the center of the courtyard of Outpost 404. It was now 18 p.m. The jungle had extended their nightmare. Day 9. The Siege of the Blood Rain. Active rules. Rule 11. Rule 9. Rule 3. Rule 7. They were trapped for a 9th day. The sky above Outpost 404 turned a sickening shade of bruised purple. Instead of regular rain, a thick, coppery crimson liquid began to pour from the sky. Blood rain. The faceless woman in the rain poncho didn't just stand outside the window anymore. The blood rain was melting the glass, causing the seals to pop. Dozens of faceless entities began to crowd around the perimeter, their wet ponchos scraping against the concrete walls. "The water tank is completely flooded with it," Dome gasping for breath, clutching his stomach. They hadn't eaten or drank anything clean in over 48 hours. Out of sheer desperation, Dome tried to open Kang's abandoned backpack to find the leftover human-toothed rabbit meat. Rule 7, 8. But Eris tackled him to the ground. "If you eat that, you become one of them, Dome!" "Hold on!" Eris screamed. At midnight, the polite 3-knock sequence sounded on the heavy steel door. But it wasn't just one hand knocking. It was hundreds of hands, creating a deafening, rhythmic symphony of terror. Eris and Dome stood in the center of the flooding bunker, their feet submerged in black water, screaming until their vocal cords tore. "The shift is over, comrade! The shift is over!" The entities howled in frustration, their gnarled claws scratching through the concrete, leaving deep gashes in the walls. Day 10. The ultimate sacrifice and the true discharge. Active rules. Rule 12. Rule 13. Rule 14. The 10th day arrived with a silence so profound it felt heavy.
The black mold on the wall had completely covered the barracks, forming a massive, living tapestry of screaming faces. Rule 13. The mold began to constrict the room, closing in on Eris and Dome like a tightening noose. At 0333, the batteryless grandfather clock ticked its final, heavy note. Rule 12. Eris and Dome held hands in a desperate circle. But this time, Dome's hand was burning hot, while Eris felt the sudden, paralyzing chill of death creeping up his own arm. Eris looked down. The black mold had crawled up his legs, anchoring him to the bunker floor. He was chosen. The bunker was demanding its fourth man to maintain the key.
Dome, listen to me. Eris smiled weakly, tears cutting through the grime on his face. When the clock stops ticking, you run. Don't look back. No, I'm not leaving you, Eris, Dome cried, trying to pull his friend free. But Eris's grip was like iron.
You have to calculate the survival rate, remember? Eris grinned, using his last ounce of strength to push Dome toward the exit just as the clock struck 08. The heavy steel door blew open with a violent blast of wind. Outside, a rusted, battle-worn military jeep arrived. It didn't blow its horn 3 times. Instead, an old, blind veteran soldier stepped out, saluted the bunker, and shouted, "Outpost 404, your shift is officially over. Return to base." The black mold completely swallowed Eris, drawing him into the screaming wall. Dome, honoring his friend's sacrifice, scrambled out of the bunker, diving into the back of the jeep. As the vehicle sped away, the fog finally lifted from the mountains. Dome looked back one last time.
Outpost 404 was collapsing into the earth, sinking into the dark jungle. And standing on the crumbling roof, side by side, were Kang and Eris, both wearing their military caps, standing at perfect attention, finally discharged from the world of the living.